Hi everyone. So in this tutorial series we are going to be doing database management, and I'm going to focus mostly on something called the relational model and SQL. But before we start with that, I want to give you some motivation to learn database management and introduce you to some terminology related to the same. So that's what we'll be doing in this video. So when we write a program, the variables that we create are stored in memory, and this memory is volatile. What this means is that when we turn off our system, or in most cases when we terminate our program itself, we lose all the data from that program. So this is where persistent data comes into play. We need a way to store some data across program sessions. So, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is just storing data in just any text file. So, you create a text file and just create something like v1 equals something, v2 equals something, and so on. You can just put this in a text file, but this starts becoming a problem when the amount of data that we have becomes massive. So let's say we have all of this data in a text file and we want to fetch the value of a variable v1. What we would do is we would iterate through every line in the file, and whenever we find v1 we would get the value corresponding to that. And remember that we're actually writing all of this code in our program itself, which is kind of tedious and unnecessary. So this is where database management systems come into play. These systems just do all of this work for us. So we just have to tell the system, get me the value of variable v1, and it will do all the work behind the scenes and it'll get me the value of this variable v1. So I hope this explains why database systems are important, and database management systems are used in all organizations, big or small, from schools and colleges to organizations that handle data from all over the world. So let's get to some terminology related to these database systems. The first thing that I want to talk about is the data model, which basically refers to how data is arranged. So the most intuitive way, at least according to me, is to store data in a table. So we would have different columns in this table, and then some heading for each column, and then I would have data in these cells right here, kind of like an Excel sheet. So this model is known as the relational model, and that's what we are going to be looking at in this series. Another way to store this is store data is to use a hierarchical model, which is used in XML. So we have, let's say, some root, and then we have something inside of this, and then maybe something inside of this as well, and so on. And then I would probably close this one right here and then close the root as well. So that's kind of how an XML file looks like. And another way to store data would be to have nodes and edges between them. So that's basically a graph that we use to store data. That's another way. So these are all different data models, and we'll be looking at this one right here, this one in detail. This is the relational model. So let's also get you introduced to some terminology related to database systems. So the first thing that you should know, the first word that comes very often is the word schema. And schema basically just refers to how the data is arranged. So schema is in this case, in the relational model, would be these columns. What columns do we have? And then the data is arranged in a database according to the schema. So This schema does not really change much with time, whereas the data in a database keeps changing rapidly. So next, the language that we use to make the schema is known as the data definition language, or DDL. So if we say create a new table or add a column to a table, or remove a column from a table, all of that would be part of the data definition language. And the other one is the data manipulation language, the DML, which basically refers to all the operations that we do related to retrieving, storing, or updating data. So let's say I say something like update all values in this column by let's say add 10 to these integers, or I could say something like go to this column and do some string operation, let's say get rid of anything after a space or something like that. So all of that would be data manipulation. That's DML. I hope you kind of get an idea of what the data definition language and data manipulation language is. We're going to be looking at all of this in much more detail. So I'll see you in the next video, where we'll be taking a closer look at the relational model. So stay tuned for it.